Before we dive into today's adventure, we're taking you to one of the most fascinating capitals in South America, Quito, Ecuador. Sitting high in the Andes at almost 2,850 meters above sea level, Quito is famous for its stunning mountain views, colorful colonial streets, vibrant local culture, and its unique location right next to the equator itself. It's also home to one of the best preserved historic centers in Latin America, a UNESCO World Heritage Site packed with churches, plazas, and centuries of history. But here's the thing, most travelers only scratch the surface of what Quito has to offer. In this video, we're going to show you how to make the most of just a few days in Quito and its surroundings. We'll explore the city's must-see highlights, discover some hidden gems, and take you beyond the capital to places that are surprisingly easy to visit on your own. And the best part? You don't need an expensive tour agency to do it. We'll share practical tips, transportation advice, costs, and everything we learn along the way, so you can plan a similar trip independently and experience Ecuador at your own pace. So grab your backpack and let's explore Quito together. When choosing your accommodation, don't just look at the price, look at the location. Quito is a very unusual city. Instead of spreading out in all directions, it stretches for dozens of kilometers through a narrow valley between the mountains. On the map, two places might seem relatively close, but getting from one side of the city to the other can easily take an hour or more, especially during rush hour. The airport is a perfect example. Although it's called Quito Airport, it's actually located in the area of Tababela, well outside the city. Getting from the airport to the historic center usually takes around an hour and a half, so it's definitely something to keep in mind when planning your stay. Cost is $3 to $4 US. If it's your first time in Quito, we'd recommend staying somewhere between the historic center or around La Mariscal, which is known for its nightlife and backpacker atmosphere. That way, you'll be relatively close to most of the places you'll probably want to visit. One thing we really enjoyed in Quito was using public transportation, not only because it's cheap, but because it gives you a glimpse of everyday life in the city. Most bus rides cost somewhere between 30 and 45 cents, which makes getting around incredibly affordable, especially if you're planning to explore different parts of the city over several days. But riding the buses here is much more than simply getting from point A to point B. In many ways, every ride feels like a small performance. It's very common for street vendors to hop on at one stop, walk through the bus introducing their products, and then get off a few stops later. Some sell snacks, candies, drinks, phone accessories, or small household items. Others share a short personal story before offering something for sale. And it's not just vendors. During our time in Quito, we also saw musicians boarding buses with guitars or small speakers, performing a song or two before passing through the aisle. Sometimes you'll hear motivational speeches, comedy routines, or people promoting local events. It turns what could be an ordinary commute into something much more lively and unpredictable. Our first stop in Quito was the historic center, and this is where we really started to feel the character of the city. The Old Town is one of the best preserved historic centers in Latin America and was actually one of the first places in the world to be added to UNESCO's World Heritage List. Walking through its narrow streets, surrounded by colonial buildings, churches, and lively squares, it's easy to see why. The main highlights here are Plaza Grande, the heart of the city, the impressive Basilica del Voto Nacional, and La Compañía de Jesús, a church famous for its incredibly ornate interior covered in gold leaf. But what we enjoyed just as much as the architecture was the food. The streets are full of local vendors selling traditional snacks and drinks. One of the things we kept seeing was choclo con queso, giant Andean corn served with a slice of fresh cheese. It might sound simple, but it's a classic Ecuadorian snack and definitely worth trying. Another local favorite is morocho. This thick, warm drink is made from ground corn, milk, sugar, and spices, and is often served with empanadas. It's especially popular in the cooler mountain climate of Quito and feels somewhere between a drink and a dessert. If you're exploring the city early in the morning or on a chilly afternoon, a cup of morocho is a great way to warm up. Honestly, the historic center isn't just about checking landmarks off a list. It's a place to slow down, wander around, try some local food from the street vendors, and soak in the atmosphere of one of South America's most beautiful old cities. After exploring Quito itself, we headed to one of the most famous attractions in all of Ecuador, Mitad del Mundo. At first, we thought it would just be a quick photo stop at the equator, but there's actually quite a bit to see here, and it's easy to spend a few hours exploring the complex. The main attraction is, of course, the large monument marking the equator. Inside, you'll find a museum spread across several floors that tells the story of Ecuador's geography, indigenous cultures, and history. And if you make your way to the top, you'll get some nice views of the surrounding area. The complex itself feels a bit like a small village. There are restaurants, cafes, colorful colonial-style buildings, and plenty of souvenir shops. This is also one of the better places to pick up Ecuadorian souvenirs, from alpaca wool products and Panama hats, to chocolate, coffee, and all kinds of equator-themed gifts. One of the more unusual spots is the small church inside the complex. The equator line passes right through it, and visitors can ring the church bell before continuing their tour. We also came across a llama enclosure where you can get up close to one of the animals most commonly associated with the Andes. Not exactly something you see every day. If you're interested in something more interactive, there is also a VR experience that lets visitors explore different parts of Ecuador virtually, as well as a planetarium where you can learn more about the night sky and the unique astronomical significance of being located so close to the equator. And just a few minutes away from the main complex is the Intiñan Museum. This is where you'll find the famous equator demonstrations, cultural exhibits, and interactive activities that explain why this line has fascinated travelers for centuries. Intiñan Museum is a must-see place, and don't expect a traditional museum where you just read information panels and look at exhibits. The whole experience is built around participation, and the guides constantly invite visitors to take part in the demonstrations. The most famous experiment is the water demonstration. The guide places a container of water directly on the equator line, then a few meters north and a few meters south, showing how the water appears to behave differently in each hemisphere. Whether you see it as science or a bit of showmanship, it's definitely entertaining and gets everyone talking. Visitors can also try balancing an egg on the head of a nail right on the equator line. It sounds easy, but it usually takes several attempts and a lot of patience. If you manage to do it, you can even receive a certificate proving your achievement. Another challenge is walking along the equator line with your eyes closed without losing your balance. It turns out to be much harder than most people expect, and it's always fun watching both adults and kids give it a try. There are also strength and balance demonstrations where volunteers from the audience become part of the experiment. Beyond the experiments, the museum also introduces visitors to Ecuador's indigenous cultures through reconstructed traditional homes, displays of tools, customs, and ancient traditions. So even if you're not interested in the equator itself, there's plenty to learn about the country's cultural heritage. One of the exhibits that really caught our attention was dedicated to the Shuar people of the Ecuadorian Amazon and their famous tsantzas, or shrunken heads. These were traditionally created from the heads of defeated enemies and were believed to contain the spirit of the person, preventing it from seeking revenge. Today, they're one of the most well-known and certainly most unusual symbols associated with Ecuador's indigenous history. The museum explains the cultural and spiritual significance behind the practice and displays replicas, giving visitors a chance to learn about a tradition that is often misunderstood and sensationalized. What we liked most was that this wasn't one of those museums where you're just observing from a distance. Here, you're constantly invited to participate, test things yourself, and become part of the experience. Whether the experiments convince you or not, they're fun, memorable, and definitely make the visit much more interactive than a typical museum stop. Getting to Mitad del Mundo is actually quite easy, even without a car. If you're staying near the historic center, you can take public transport toward the northern part of Quito or simply head to Ofelia Terminal, where buses to Mitad del Mundo leave regularly throughout the day. It's one of the easiest day trips you can do using public transportation, and if you have a bit more time, don't stop at Mitad del Mundo. Just continue on the same road toward Pululahua, another place that's well worth visiting. The best part is that you can get there by public bus as well. After getting off at the Pululahua stop, it's about a 1-kilometer walk uphill to the main viewpoint. Pululahua is one of the few inhabited volcanic craters in the world. What looks like a huge green valley is actually the caldera of an ancient volcano, and people still live and farm inside it today. From the viewpoint, the scenery is incredible, especially when the clouds drift through the crater. There are also several hiking trails in the area, so if you enjoy walking in nature, it's easy to spend a few hours exploring the surroundings. Your best chances for a clear view without fog is early morning before 9 a.m. This is also a good moment to mention something that becomes obvious very quickly when visiting Quito. The city is surrounded by volcanoes and mountains. Everywhere you look, there are peaks rising above the horizon. Some of them are extinct, while others are still active. In fact, Ecuador sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, one of the most volcanically active regions on Earth. Many of the mountains around Quito reach well over 4,000 meters, and some nearby volcanoes climb above 5,000 meters. On a clear day, you can even spot some of these giant peaks in the distance, reminding you that you're deep in the Andes. It's one of the things that makes Quito feel so dramatic and different from most other capitals around the world. And if you're interested in indigenous culture and astronomy, there's also the Museo del Sol in the area, which offers a different perspective on how ancient civilizations understood the sun, the stars, and the world around them. So with Mitad del Mundo, Pululahua, and a few other nearby attractions, this part of Quito can easily fill an entire day without spending much money or needing a tour.
That's where we're going to leave this first part of our Quito adventure. So far, we've explored the historic center, stood on the equator, and discovered some of the fascinating places around the city. But there's much more to see. In part 2, we'll head to Otavalo and Mindo to explore indigenous markets, mountain landscapes, cloud forests, hummingbirds, and plenty more Ecuadorian surprises. We'll see you there.
If you enjoyed traveling through Quito with us, don't forget to leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for the channel. Your support helps us keep exploring new places and sharing them with you.